And now, a look into the book, Gabrielle's Time Tale. Hi, I'm Jeffrey Higginson, author of Gabrielle's Time Tale. What's that? You say I look like the guy on the book cover? Yeah, we do look alike, because that's me. This book is on Amazon. I have it in both paperback and Kindle. If you haven't gotten your copy yet, maybe you're unsure about spending your money on a story that you never heard before. That's why I'm going to read the first few chapters for you right here on YouTube. Let's get started. Gabrielle's Time Tale by Jeffrey Higginson. Illustrations by Jeffrey Higginson. Chapter 1. Lost and Found. Gabrielle was a young sweet girl who was good at making new friends. Everyone called her Gabby. At 5 years of age, she had many friends that she had gotten acquainted with in the time period of less than a year. She was always honest and friendly. However, she wasn't like anyone else. Everyone else had parents, at least at some point in their lives. In addition to not knowing if she ever had any parents, nobody knew where she came from, nobody knew her full name, and nobody knew when she was born. Comparing her to other children, it was everyone's best guess that she was currently at the age of 5. Although she was always completely honest, her curiosity as to why she had no parents would later make everyone question her honesty. It started 1 year ago when Gabby was presumptively at the age of 4. It all happened in River City, Tennessee, with a population of over 12,000 residents. On a spring day in the month of May in the year 2019, Mr. and Mrs. Fielding were driving to the grocery store. They were both close to the age of 50, and their 2 sons and 2 daughters had all grown up and moved away. For several months, they both wished they were a bit younger with kids in their house to raise again, but they both knew that time was only making them older by the minute. When they were only half a mile away from the location of the grocery store, Mrs. Fielding looked to the left across the street where there was a field of many trees. "Pull over," she said. "What?" Mr. Fielding asked. "Pull over," repeated Mrs. Fielding, still looking out the car window to the left. "What's wrong?" asked Mr. Fielding while pulling over to the side of the road. "Why is that little girl walking all by herself?" Mr. Fielding looked to the left where Mrs. Fielding was looking, but he couldn't see anyone besides the people traveling in their cars. "What are you talking about? What little girl?" Mrs. Fielding pointed towards the little girl across the street who was walking in the field along the outskirts of the trees not too far from the road. "Right over there." With cars passing by in both directions, although there were not too many to block his view, Mr. Fielding took another look. "I still don't see anyone. Maybe we should continue on our way to the store." "But how can you not see her? She's just over there not too far from the road," said Mrs. Fielding, pointing towards the little girl again. Mr. Fielding took one more look. A semi-truck then passed by, traveling in the opposite direction from where they were heading. As soon as the semi-truck was out of the way, he finally saw her. "Oh, there she is, and why is she wearing that dress? Today is only Tuesday. Is she coming from or walking to a special event?" "I don't know, but in a city this big, she shouldn't be walking alone by herself." "Yeah, maybe we should go find out where her parents are before something happens to her." Mr. Fielding turned off the car. He and Mrs. Fielding got out and stood beside the street while they waited for traffic to pass. When the street was cleared, they walked swiftly toward the little girl. As soon as they got across the street, they walked slower as to not scare away the girl. "Excuse me," Mrs. Fielding said to her, but the girl just kept walking with no response. Mrs. Fielding turned to her husband. "I'm sure I spoke loud enough. Can she not hear me?" She turned back to the little girl. "Excuse me," she said again. The girl looked over to them and stopped walking. Mrs. Fielding faced her husband. Speaking quietly, she said, "It looks like she heard me this time." Facing the girl again, she spoke a little louder. "Where are your parents?" "I don't know," the girl said. "What's your name?" asked Mrs. Fielding. "I'm Gabrielle." "Are you going somewhere?" Mr. Fielding asked. "I'm trying to find my house," answered Gabrielle. "I think I'm lost." "Where did you come from?" asked Mr. Fielding. "From over there," Gabrielle said, pointing towards the middle of the field of trees. Mrs. Fielding started feeling quite worried for Gabrielle. She turned back to Mr. Fielding and said quietly in a worried tone of voice, "There's nothing in that field besides a forest of trees." Mr. Fielding started feeling worried as well. He walked over to Gabrielle through the short distance of the few feet that had been spacing them apart. "I think you should come with us," he said while reaching out his hand. "Maybe we can help you find your house along with finding out where your parents are. It's not good for a little girl to be alone outside in a big city." While cars were passing by on the busy paved street, Gabrielle looked around and she wondered what the old man was talking about concerning a big city. All she could see was a dirt road that was empty, which ran through a huge grassy field with spaced out trees on both sides, and there were no buildings anywhere. She remembered being told not to go places with strangers, but as lost as she felt, she decided to trust the old couple in hopes that they could lead her back home, so she took a hold of the old man's hand. The three of them walked to the edge of the road and stopped. Mr. and Mrs. Felding waited for both ways to be clear of traffic before crossing. "Why are we standing here?" asked Gabrielle. "We need to wait for both ways to be clear before we cross," replied Mr. Felding. Gabrielle looked down the street in both directions, and all she could see that was moving on the road were a few leaves slowly being blown by a slight wind. "Maybe they don't want the leaves to hit us," she thought. As soon as the traffic was clear, they started walking across the road back to Mr. and Mrs. Felding's car. On their way, Gabrielle was fascinated that the rocky dirt road was the least bumpy road she had ever walked on. When they approached the car, Gabrielle pointed to it and asked, "What's that?" "That's our car," answered Mrs. Felding. Gabrielle looked down at the tires. "Is it like a buggy?" she asked. Then she looked around in all directions. "Where's the horse?" Still feeling worried, Mr. Felding turned to face his wife and he spoke quietly to her. "She obviously knows some history, but she doesn't even know what a car is," he said, pausing to glance over to Gabrielle before turning back to Mrs. Felding. "Maybe she's been lost for longer than we thought." Mrs. Felding led Gabrielle to the passenger side of the car away from the traffic, and she opened the back door for her. "We don't have a baby seat or a booster seat for you, so you'll just have to sit right here on the back seat for now." Gabrielle got in, and Mrs. Felding helped her with the seat belt. As soon as Mr. Felding started the car with no sound of any other cars on the street, Gabrielle felt scared. "What's that noise?" she asked in a tone of fright. "I started the car," Mr. Felding said, "and the noise right now is the motor." "Oh," responded Gabrielle. She immediately calmed down and assumed the car was like a small train that didn't need any train tracks. Knowing that keeping Gabrielle at home with them would most likely result in receiving a criminal record as a kidnapper, Mr. Felding headed to the police station to report the situation. On the way there, Gabrielle constantly looked out the windows while she enjoyed the smooth ride. After a while, she noticed a building that she had never seen before, located close to the street. "Wow, I've never seen a building like that before," she exclaimed. "Which building?" Mrs. Felding asked. Gabrielle pointed towards the building. "The only one over there." Mrs. Felding turned around and looked to see where Gabrielle was pointing, but there were too many buildings along the busy street to know exactly which one she was referring to. Mrs. Felding assumed that what Gabrielle said about the only building meant the only one in the exact direction to wherever she was pointing. "Yeah, there are lots of buildings everywhere like that," she responded, pretending she knew which building Gabrielle saw. While they continued to travel, Gabrielle looked out the windows in all directions, and there was only the one building that she could see, which happened to be the oldest building in the entire city. "Maybe she thinks one building is a lot of buildings," Gabrielle thought. Approaching an intersection up ahead, Mr. Felding started slowing down to a red traffic light, needing to turn left. When they came to the intersection, the left light turned green, so Mr. Felding proceeded. Gabrielle looked out the window to the left while they were turning, and it appeared that they were turning off the dirt road onto the grassy field. "Why are you turning off the road onto the grass?" she asked. "Onto the grass?" asked Mr. Felding. Immediately, he assumed that Gabrielle must have seen a few grass clippings on the road. "I'm turning off that road because we need to take this other road to get to where we're going." "Oh," said Gabrielle. "Well, he's either taking a shortcut through the grass to another road, or someone forgot to make a road that goes to where we're going," she thought. However, she was surprised at how smooth a ride on a grassy field could be. Not understanding why they had to stay tied to the seat, Gabrielle figured out how to unbuckle her seatbelt. Having sat beside the window on the passenger side for long enough, she moved over to the window on the driver's side. Looking outside to the left, wanting to see what made the ride feel so smooth, she looked downwards at the ground, and she was immediately astonished when she saw the grass-covered ground that they were traveling on turn quickly into a dirt road. Gradually, it turned into a paved road, and she watched while the road grew wider and wider. A minute later, she looked across the street and noticed another building, then another, and then another. The entire street was soon filled with numerous buildings on both sides. In addition to what she was seeing, she saw a car passing them in the other lane, heading in the same direction, and, after a short moment, several cars were coming on the other side of the road, heading in the opposite direction. "I hope we're not too far from home," she thought. "I don't remember this city." After Mr. Felding parked the car close to the entrance of the police station, Mrs. Felding took a hold of her purse and got ready to open the car door. Looking at the unorganized contents of her purse, it looked like a jumbled-up mess, and she didn't want to wait for a time when she would immediately need something and have to spend time to find it. "You two go ahead," she said. "I'll be there as soon as I get things organized here." After entering the police station, Mr. Felding noticed a service desk located halfway down the hallway. Sitting behind the desk, a policeman named Officer Gunwell was doing some paperwork. Gabrielle followed Mr. Felding over to the desk. When they approached the desk, Gabrielle wondered what they were doing inside an empty building. "Why are we walking over here?" she asked. "We need to talk to this nice police officer," replied Mr. Felding. Then he turned to Officer Gunwell. "Pardon me, officer." While Gabrielle looked around the empty building, the officer looked up from doing his paperwork and saw Mr. Felding standing there. "What can I do for you, sir?" "There's nobody here," Gabrielle said to Mr. Felding. "Who are you talking to?" Mr. Felding looked at Gabrielle. "I'm talking to this policeman right here behind the desk." Officer Gunwell was a little confused. He looked at the man who was standing at his desk while he waited for an answer to his question and wondered whom the man was talking to. Gabrielle looked at the empty desk. "But there's no policeman here." "Of course there is. He's sitting right here," said Mr. Felding, pointing behind the desk. Officer Gunwell's confusion soon led him to assume that the man who appeared to be talking to nobody was talking into the speaker of a small hidden cell phone. "Oh, I hope this is not another one of those cases," he thought, referring to several other crazy people who had come into the police station in the past. Mr. Felding turned to Officer Gunwell. "I'm sorry, officer. I'm just talking to this little girl here. My wife and I found her walking along the street all by herself. She doesn't know where her parents are, and she said she's lost." "Who are you talking to?" asked Gabrielle at the same time the officer asked a question. "I can't hear two people at once," said Mr. Felding. "What were you saying, officer?" "I asked you how old she is," repeated Officer Gunwell. Mr. Felding looked downwards at Gabrielle. "Oh, I'd say she's about 3 or 4. Then he turned his head back towards the officer. Officer Gunwell wondered why the man needed to look at the floor to answer the question. "And what's the girl's name?" Mr. Felding looked at Gabrielle. "Would you like to tell him your name?" he asked her, not knowing that she and the officer could not see or hear each other. "Tell who?" "The policeman." "But nobody's here." Mr. Felding assumed that Gabrielle must have been pretending that everyone was invisible. "Just say your name." Gabrielle assumed that Mr. Felding must have been pretending to talk to a ghost. "Gabrielle," she said to the invisible ghost. Officer Gunwell waited several seconds to hear the girl's name. "I can't hear her, sir. Could you turn up the volume on your phone?" "What phone?" asked Mr. Felding. "Well, whatever you're talking into. Could you turn up the volume or just tell me the girl's name?" "I'm not talking into anything, and she just told you her name." "How long do we need to play ghost?" Gabrielle thought. "Where is she?" asked Officer Gunwell. "She's standing here beside me," answered Mr. Felding. Officer Gunwell looked to both sides of the man. Then he looked carefully again. Seeing nobody there, he stood up from his desk. "I need to go grab some more paperwork," he said. "Just wait right here, and I'll be back shortly." While the officer headed down the hallway away from the entrance doors towards one of several office rooms, Mrs. Felding entered the building. She saw Mr. Felding and walked over to him. In the office room, Officer Gunwell grabbed a paper to file another case of a lunatic needing psychiatric treatment. A fellow officer noticed what he was getting. "Another one of those cases, huh?" the fellow officer asked. "Yep, another one," said Officer Gunwell. "Did you get his name?" asked the other officer. Officer Gunwell realized that he hadn't asked the man's name amidst the squabble of trying to find out the name of a girl who didn't seem to exist. "No, I'll go do that right now." As soon as Officer Gunwell opened the office door to return back to the service desk, Gabrielle turned to face the office and she saw him coming out. She pointed to him and said, "There's the policeman." At least she finally stopped pretending that everyone is invisible, thought Mr. Felding. While walking back down the hallway from the office room, Officer Gunwell looked towards the service desk and noticed a lady and a little girl standing next to the man who had been acting peculiar. After arriving back at the desk, the officer faced the man and said, "Sir, I need to get your name." He placed a guest sign-up sheet and a pen down on the desk in front of Mr. Felding. "Please sign here." Next, he turned to face the lady. "And you're the wife?" he asked while Mr. Felding signed his name. "Yes, officer. I'm Mrs. Felding." Officer Gunwell faced the little girl who he assumed was brought into the police station by Mrs. Felding. "And who do we have here?" "I'm Gabrielle," the girl said. "Well, that's a good name for a pretty girl like you," said Officer Gunwell. "And that's a pretty dress you have on. It looks a lot like the dresses shown in some ancestry photos. close. The officer turned to Mr. Felding. "Is this the lost girl you were talking about?" Mr. Felding assumed that the officer didn't have good vision in his eyes before heading to the room down the hallway, and perhaps had put contacts in his eyes before coming back to the desk. "Yes, this is the girl." Officer Gunwell faced Gabrielle. "So, little lady, I understand you're lost?" "Yes, sir." "Do you know where you live?" "No, sir." "Who are your parents?" "I don't know." "How long have you been lost?" "I can't remember." "What's your last name?" "I don't know." Officer Gunwell sat down at the desk. After setting aside the file of psychiatric cases, he grabbed a paper on which he started to file a missing child report. After filling out what little information he was given, he turned to Mr. and Mrs. Felding. "Are either of you licensed for foster care?" They both shook their heads. "No, we're not," Mr. Felding said. Officer Gunwell turned to Gabrielle. "Well, sweetheart, our only option right now is to put you in foster care while we do some investigation as to where your parents are." "Okay," Gabrielle said, trusting the policeman, but unsure and a little scared about what they were going to do with her. Gabrielle stayed at the police station while Mr. and Mrs. Felding headed to the grocery store where they were heading to earlier that day. After they were done shopping, they headed home. On their way, they thought about their experience with Gabrielle. "She sure was a sweet girl," said Mrs. Felding. "Yeah, if only our kids could be that age again," Mr. Felding said. "It sure would make me feel a lot younger." "It's too bad that we can't just grow younger every day. Wouldn't it be nice if we could have someone like little Gabby to raise again?" "Well, the only way for that to happen is to wait for grandkids to come along. And even then, our kids will be raising them most of the time." A few seconds of silence passed before an idea came to Mrs. Felding. "Oh, honey, I have an idea. What if we could get licensed for foster care like the officer mentioned? That way we won't have to wait for grandkids to come along, and it will be like raising kids of our own again." Mr. Felding thought about it for a moment. "We don't know what child or children we will be getting, and by the time we get licensed, Gabby will probably be in another foster home. But what if we can get someone just as sweet as Gabby was? I'm sure we can say no to any foster placement that doesn't feel right for us." "I guess we could try," agreed Mr. Felding. I hope you enjoyed Chapter 1. Now watch my next video of Gabrielle's Time Tale, Chapter 2.